Welcome to Nighthawk Radio, Real Talk Show, Episode 2. To listen to Nighthawk Radio, go to nighthawk-radio.com. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, YouTube Music, Rumble, everywhere you find good podcasts. We're blessed to have John Crouch and Joe Flippo hosting tonight. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How you doing?
I'm blessed, man. Glad to have you guys on.
Well, it's always good to be invited to stop back by for a chat.
Definitely, man. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on.
No
No
problem.
problem.
Well, John, I know you got some questions for Joe, so I'll let you go ahead and ask them, brother.
Well, so I guess Joe's been on the podcast before. I've been on the podcast before, but we've never been on the podcast together. So I'm
Right.
looking forward to hearing some of Joe's stories here. I understand he's a Bigfoot researcher, been out on uh, Bigfoot hunts and stuff. So I just want to hear some of his stories.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not a researcher. I'm a hunter.
Okay.
There's a difference. There's a difference. The reason why I got into looking at Bigfoot is because I saw one, and when I realized they were real, at the time I was an avid hunter, hog hunter, a deer hunter. I hunted squirrels, rabbits, coons, the coyotes, and I came from a subsistence hunting family. So it just like if I'd moved into bear country, when I realized that was real, I was going to find out everything I could about it, because if I got a hog or a deer on the ground, one of these things shows up, I got to know if it's going to get take my kill, or am I on the menu, or are we both on the menu? If you gutting something, you got blood all over you, that's just a dinner bell for any large predator. So that was my motivation for going out and looking up these things and finding them. And basically, what I did was I took my skills as a hunter and I applied it to Sasquatch. Um, and I listened to the old people stories that was in my family. My dad's French Cherokee, and I listened to the old stories, and I said, well, if they're not really stories, then there may be tidbits of truth that I could use.
Mhm.
So I started out doing that, and then I started for 10 years. I did it by myself because I didn't think anybody else was interested in that. This is in 2005. It was before Bigfoot was a big thing on the internet,
Mhm.
and I just went and looked for them, and I found them. I mean, that I lived in a swamp down there in southeast Texas, and we had one coming up to the house that for a couple of years I thought was a hog just because of the smell, till I found the footprints, and so it just went from there.
Wow. Yeah. So first of all, what do you believe Bigfoots are? Are they animals? Are they more like humans? Are they supernatural or what? What's your
Okay, first of all, I believe they're flesh and blood.
mhm.
Okay. All right. Second of all, I believe the term Bigfoot is a synonym for the term ape. If you say ape, you can mean either a human, a chimpanzee, a billy ape, a gorilla, orangutan, or any of those subspecies are all apes.
Mhm.
I think in North America there's as many non-human primates as Africa has. They're just not discovered. And because we don't have the name for each individual, they call them types. I think they're all different subspecies. Now, some of them that look human may be a relic hominid. I don't know. I've never seen one personally that looked enough human for me to think, oh, this is a Cro-Magnon or a Neanderthal or anything, even though there's a lot of people who have seen those. Everything I've seen has been non-human primate looking to me, and they act like that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think whatever they are, they're definitely an intelligent species. Now I know that the thing that kind of turned me onto the whole Bigfoot phenomenon and stuff was I obviously heard about them growing up. People said, there's a legend of Sasquatch, whatever, half human, half ape creature.
Right.
I'm like, now I'm a kind of scientific person. I was always into science growing up, and so whenever I heard about something, whether it was Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, whatever, anything that a lot of people report seeing that science doesn't have an explanation for, I was naturally drawn to. I was like,
Right.
all I can about it. I mean, this is really interesting. I don't know what this is, but I want to find out more. So same thing with Bigfoot. And I was into the whole UFO thing and stuff
Right.
too. I'm into all that kind of stuff, researching it.
Yeah.
But what really struck me, like I said, I've personally never had a Bigfoot sighting. I have found like tree structures and stuff that can't really be explained with
Mm-hmm.
natural causes, really. Like
Right.
there's like trees, stacked up in like a teepee shape or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't see any natural way they could fall that way, and
Right.
they're too heavy for humans to move. I've actually got some pictures from Yellowwood State Forest in Indiana, some
Mm-hmm.
probably 50 or 60 feet tall, stacked in like a teepee shape, and then some of them like bowed over. And I'm sure you've seen like the arches, whatever,
Right.
trees.
Right.
A lot of those I found in Yellowwood were like along trails and stuff. There was one bowed over like an access road.
Mm-hmm.
I think those, I'm not exactly sure what they use those for, but I think there's some kind of trail markers, um, maybe just marking a trail to something specific, whatever. I'm not sure, but the thing that struck me about the whole Sasquatch phenomenon and stuff was how there's people in different parts of the world from different time eras that all had legends of the same kind of creature. Like,
Right.
the Native Americans had legends of Sasquatch, whatever, and different tribes had different
Mm-hmm.
about a similar creature. Um,
Yeah.
they had different names for them, obviously. Meanwhile, at the same time, people in like the Himalayan mountains in Asia had legends of the Yeti, uh,
Yeah.
abominable snowman, whatever they call it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
now, present day people like some of us are, reporting Bigfoots, whatever, basically the same thing. So all these people that have never had contact with each other, I don't think could make up a legend like that. So I believe there's something to it.
Yeah, there's always something to it. I mean, you can look on the internet now and find stuff from all over the world. But as little as 60 to 75 years ago, they didn't have that. So if you look at the stuff past the modern information age, that's what you look at to see if stuff is real. Um,
Mm.
I I like to look at the native legends, but uh, a lot of people say they came across the land bridge with the early humans. I don't believe that. I think they were on Pangea before Pangea broke up,
Hmm.
and so when the continents shifted, they were already on that land, and those when the land changed and they had different environments, they adapted over time,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why you see the different types. Even in Africa, you see the different types of primates and apes that have changed for just their environment. They're local on that one continent. Well, you got, if they're on every continent, then they're going to change just as much. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a Sumatran orangutan couldn't survive where a mountain gorilla could because they're adapted different. And over here, uh, in America, we've got so many different climates and elevations that it would make sense that there would be different shapes of the same thing. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, even in people, like people up in, say, North Dakota or up in Alaska, they can go out in the winter with, no coat on, and I guess it'd be spring, summer, or whatever up there. It could be like
Right.
50 degrees out and they can walk around with no coat on, but it could be 70 degrees in Florida and they'll be wearing jackets down there,
Right.
bodies, even people, adapt to their surroundings, the
Right.
climate
Well,
and stuff. So,
another thing is too, if you look at Shaquille O'Neal and Danny DeVito, if you didn't know what a modern human was, you'd think they were two different species because they are very different in their physical attributes. But they're both humans. They're both modern humans, and that may be a part of what we see with these Sasquatch, where they may look completely different, and it could be just as simple as a different race of them. Or different subspecies, but we just don't have the knowledge of knowing right now. And I think the reason why we see them more now than we have been seeing in the past is because it takes any animal species about 500 years to adapt to a new disease. And
mm-hmm,
it's been about 500 years since the Europeans came over to the New World.
mm-hmm,
So when they came over, these Sasquatch that hid in the deepest part of the mountains and stuff were just like a relic breeding population, and it took them 500 years for those who were naturally immune to these European diseases to procreate and build their families up. And now I think they're actually starting to thrive. Is the reason why we see more. It's not so much we're going deeper into the woods; is they're comfortable enough to come closer to civilization.
mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I've always been concerned about is uh, I don't know if, like, you believe any conspiracies of the government, like, covering up their existence. Because it certainly seems like if as many people have seen them, that they would be a known species by now. Um, I have a few possible theories about that, but um, so personally, I kind of tend to lean more toward the fact that they're more human like and like I said, I'm not sure. Yeah, you
Mm.
probably experience than I do. Well, you definitely do, but I've tended to lean more toward the fact that they're more human like, which I feel like could create a lot of um, possibly legal issues and stuff if the government was to acknowledge their existence.
Right.
Um, so I find it hard to believe that because some of the stories I've heard are actually from like military bases.
Let me
Of,
let me throw this at you.
mm-hmm,
Well, this is just a rabbit hole, but you've been in science class and you've seen that chart that shows the rise of man from a monkey to a modern human, right?
mm-hmm,
All right. If you notice, if you get up towards the top of that, right before modern humans, you've got ancient man that's 6.5 or 5.5, 6 feet tall.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Well, on every one of those evolutionary steps, they have got bigger. Oh, they've got stronger. They've got
mm-hmm,
smarter. All right. Oh, I think, in my opinion, you take off that picture of a modern man and you put a Sasquatch at the top, and that Sasquatch is the most evolutionary uh, modern human that is indigenous to Earth. Now, now, humans. It doesn't matter what culture you go to. Every human culture has a story, origin story about being made by God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, today we could call that genetic manipulation. They didn't have those words back then.
Mm-hmm.
But if everybody recognize Sasquatch, then they got to say, well, where'd we come from? Because we don't fit on that evolutionary chart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right. Then if you look at it, humans, every land ape in the world doesn't need tools, but humans.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We are created to live in a semi-aquatic environment. We have fat deposits that make us float that no other land that or ape has.
Hmm.
Uh, we have a hooded nose to keep water out of our nostrils.
Mm-hmm.
No other apes got that. All right, our body is designed to be held up by some medium, whether it be water or something else, or else we would have a stronger strength ratio for muscle mass. If
Mm-hmm.
you look at us, we are really weak compared to land apes. A gorilla is 8 or 10 times strong as a human. I mean, just a little monkey, It ain't got to be an ape, but just a little monkey, uh, 80 pounds can kill a man because they're that strong.
Yeah.
And we don't have that strength. So if they threw out the question, well, say, all right, we recognize Sasquatch. All right, we got to uh, come up with an answer of where we come from.
Yeah.
See, that destroys all of the political and religious control that they have on the masses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, if they went that route, then they'd have to say, well, where's the other DNA come from that made us what we are?
Yeah.
That's a rabbit hole that I went down about 9 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, though. And I sometimes I like going down rabbit holes. Uh,
But if you had a fire and you put a gorilla, a chimpanzee, an orangutan, and a human around that fire, that human is the odd ape out. Them other three don't need that fire to start with. They
mm,
don't need to. They don't need to process their food. We've even got to process our food just to eat it. 60% of the stuff in nature we can't eat. They
I've
can.
kind of wondered about, like, we were talking about adaptation. I feel like, because I mean, we know our ancestors used to drink out of creeks and stuff.
Right.
Try that, we can get all kinds of parasites and stuff like that. I almost feel like we've our bodies have adapted to civilization, basically, and we've
Right.
devolved into having sensitive bodies that can't, we got to cook our food or we'll get parasites or
Hmm.
bacteria, whatever, because our immune systems aren't like other animals. We got
Right.
we can't drink water out of creeks and stuff, or we might get parasites. Uh, we can't take the heat and cold. Our bodies have adapted to being indoors. Uh,
Right.
and I think also, um, part of the reason we're so weak compared to other apes might be because our bodies have adapted to not doing hard work.
Yeah. And not climbing.
Yeah.
I think when a child is developing, when it's an infant, and it's not doing all this climbing and pulling and stuff. That's what makes apes strong. They start at birth holding on, to everything, and we don't do that.
Have you ever noticed how it seems like, uh, I've noticed differences even in people? Like, a lot of times you can tell a person that grows up on a farm, they, from what I've observed, they tend to grow bigger, it seems like. They usually have bigger hands, you know,
Right.
grew up
They
doing,
do manual labor.
yeah, versus people that grew up in a more urban environment sometimes.
Right.
Uh, like it, a lot of times their bodies even tend to be different. So
Right.
I think, yeah, if there was something like Bigfoot that has survives in the wild, as soon as they're born, they're going to be climbing, carrying things, doing a lot of
Right.
cool things. I mean, I've heard they pick up deer.
Right.
They feed on deer, so they're going to be dragging deer and stuff a lot, logs, everything. So
Right.
I think naturally, especially if you think of over thousands of years, whatever, their bodies are going to adapt to harder work, harsher elements. Um, Obviously, they can eat raw deer without getting sick, I suppose.
Right.
Drink out of creeks and stuff, all that stuff that we can't do anymore because our bodies are spoiled by civilization. So,
Yeah.
thing I've thought of as well.
Right. Yeah. When kids my age, I'm a Gen Xer. When we were little, we was put outside and play in the dirt. You
Mm,
know, people don't let their kids do that. But what they don't realize, when I was little and I was playing in the dirt, my body was getting used and building an immune system for what was in the environment. And they don't do that. That's just like all of my cousins and me had chicken pox at the same time because when one of them got it, my aunts and mama put us all there playing so we'd all get it at the same time.
yeah,
It's kind of like herd immunity. Well, they don't do that no more, but oh, that was the thinking back then. You all get it and you all get over it at the same time. You ain't constantly
yeah.
spreading it around.
I was just thinking about that today. At my church, they have a nursery in there, where the babies and toddlers are. And
Right,
they got a sign on the door that says take off your shoes before entering the nursery because babies might be crawling on the floor. They don't want them to be exposed to,
right,
whatever's on your shoe.
right.
Like, I mean, they're probably growing up that way now because they're in civilization, but, you know, I mean, I don't want them to get sick, but is that really good for them to shelter them? Thought
Right.
far down another rabbit hole. It's almost like masks did during COVID. Now I understand how bad COVID was, but after wearing masks, and
Those masks didn't help. They
no,
just recirculate anything you breathed out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they're actually bad for you because you're breathing recirculated air. But
right.
I think, yeah, I believe Sasquatches, whatever they are, have adapted to all these things in the environment, the elements and everything, and their bodies can withstand things that ours can't anymore.
Hmm.
So, so what are some of your best sightings or Sasquatch stories or whatever?
Well, I saw a female side squatch. Oh, I was down on Natchez Trace, and I used to have a Rottweiler black lab dog named Shadow that I took with me. He was 140 pounds and looked like a big pit bulldog, but solid black, basically, just to give you an idea of what he looked like. And he run off, and I sat down by a tree by the water, and I heard something a little while. I'd been sitting there probably about 20 minutes, and I heard something. And I looked around a tree, and there was a female pointing up in a tree,
Hmm.
and it looked just like a woman saying, "You get your tail down here before he sees us, and we're gonna go." And I got still, and I got to watching in that tree. It was a little one up in that tree,
Hmm.
and it crawled down after a minute or two, and it crawled down head down and jumped down on its mom and run around her body head down and left. Well, she went on, and she kept looking back the way I was, and she went on, and it got me thinking. That looked just like she was using sign language with that baby.
Hmm.
And we have American Sign Language now that's based on the Indian trade languages. And people say that Sasquatch traded with the Native Americans. You
Yeah.
know, they can't speak. They can't speak like we can. So my question is it possible that the Sasquatch actually taught the Native American sign language so that they could communicate with them?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, she sat there for about 20 minutes trying to coax that little old feller down, and he looked just like a baby chimpanzee when he come down. He was about 2.5, 3 foot tall, and he was happy in that tree. And I think until they get about 5.5, 6 foot tall, they stay in trees for protection from other larger predators.
That makes sense.
But and I also think that's why they when you see a Sasquatch a set of footprints on the ground, it's all in a straight line. They don't waddle like humans do. Humans waddle left, right, left, right, left, right. Well, their feet cross over in the front, and if they learned to walk on a limb when they were little, that makes sense that they would walk in a straight line after they get grown.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I know, like I said, I haven't really had any sightings of my own, but um, have you heard anything about? So I know you talked about when you were hunting. You wanted to learn about them, what they were capable of and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? So I personally haven't really heard many reports where they were aggressive with people. They're usually shy, um, tend to retreat. Have you heard any? Um, do you know of any instances where they were actually like aggressive to people?
I've been bluff charged. Oh, and I have been run out of the woods.
Hmm.
Oh, my dog Shadow that I told you about, we were down here in Lauderdale County at Shows Creek Game Preserve, and it's forever wildland. The man who owned that property never would develop the property, and when he died, he put it in his will that it would be forever wildland. It can never be developed. It's like 7,000 acres. Anyway, I go down there and I've observed Sasquatch down there numerous times. Well, I took my dog down there one night in October in I think it was 2011, maybe 2010. Anyway, he got down there and it was just past dark. Just past sundown. There was still a little ambient light, but it was dark in the woods, and there was this big tree that had been pushed over, and the root ball was sticking up, and when you walk down this trail about half a mile, there's a bench that you can sit there where the trails cross. It's a horse trail and a walking trail that goes down to the river. And I sat down there and let Shadow move around. Well, he bowed up on something, and I thought it was maybe a coyote or a raccoon or something until there was the loudest roar you ever heard, sound like a lion right across the trail from where he was. And
Mm-hmm.
he turned around and bushwhacked straight for the truck. He didn't go down the trail. He went straight through the woods. And I jumped up and I looked around, and there was another one that hollered, sound just like a woman screaming, that went into a howl. And so I took off. I took off down the trail. They run me out of them woods. They was in front of me, behind me, beside me. It was like I was running a gauntlet.
Wow.
In my mind, I knew they got me. If they want me, they got me. And I'm like, listen, I'm going. I said, I didn't have nothing to do with Shadow doing that. I thought, and I talked to them while I run, but they was shaking trees and they was running, and they didn't mind me seeing them either. There's one big one that run beside me on the right side, and a female that run beside me on the left side,
Mm.
and they chased me out of there. When I got past the tree line to the parking lot, they stopped. Every one of them stopped. The trees stopped shaking, everything.
Was it like a pair of them? Or was there more?
No, it was about 10 or 12 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were behind me, they were in front of me, and they were beside me. If and I kept thinking this must be how deer feel when they herd deer to a kill zone.
Yeah.
And so I got down there to the truck, and they stopped at the tree line. Everything went quiet, which was scarier to me than if it had kept hollering at me.
Yeah.
So I got in there, and my dog had jumped up in the back of my truck and was under my toolbox in the back of my truck. Now this is a 140-pound dog crawled up under my toolbox in the back of my truck. I opened the door. I was going to leave him in the back, and he knocked me down getting in the cab.
Oh, wow.
He's like, Daddy, we ready to go. So we left out of there, and that's the same area. My boys, they always watch Finding Bigfoot, and on that show they never find anything. They hoop, holler, and everything. My older boy told me, said, Daddy, let's. I want to see a Bigfoot. I said, well, we go. I can't guarantee you're going to see one, but
Careful.
I can take you down there to where they are. And so we went on a Saturday morning. It's about 10 o'clock. I'd planned on showing them some tree breaks and stuff just so they could see that they were in there, because they're mostly nocturnal in that area down there. And this is like 10:30 in the morning, Saturday morning, sunny day. And we walked down the same trail that those Sasquatch had run me out about 3 months earlier. We walked down that trail, and there was a maple tree about 6 inches round on the bottom that was broken and pushed across the trail at about a 45-degree angle. I
Hmm.
stopped and I said, boys, you see that tree? I was there the day before, and that tree wasn't there. I
Hmm.
said, you see that tree? That means there's a Sasquatch here. They don't want us going down there. They're either hunting or they're gathering or something. And about that time, we heard a howl come up from down in the valley down there. Is about 2-3 miles to the river down there, and the land goes down into a valley. And I said, you hear that? That's one there. And that was about due east of us. Well, about southeast of us, about 500-600 yards off, you could hear another one holler. I said, see, there's another one there, and that one's closer.
Hmm.
And my son was in the process of saying, oh, Daddy, that ain't a Sasquatch. Well, he got to, oh, Daddy, that ain't. And the one jumped out of an oak tree from about 40 feet up and hit every limb on the way down, landed flat footed, looked at us, huffed, and took off running through the brambles and everything. And it was almost 6.5, 7 foot tall.
Oh,
And
wow.
I turned around to ask my older son, did he see that? And he was already hot footing it back to the truck. And my younger son, my boys are a day short of 10 months apart. My younger son was still standing behind me, and he's like, Daddy, are we okay? I was like, yeah, we're good. I said, he's about y'all's age. He's adolescent. He's going to tell his daddy that y'all's daddy's up here, and we need to leave before his daddy gets here.
Yeah.
So we got back to the truck, and my older son said, Daddy, I thought when you said we was going Sasquatch hunting that you just wanting us to enjoy a good hike in the woods. He said, I've had all the Sasquatch hunting that I want. And he was about 11 then. He wouldn't come outside after dark until he was nearly 17-year-old.
Oh,
We
wow.
would have we would have bonfires in the back of my yard. I had a property. I've rented two properties that they were on, and we've seen them like a lot. Um, and whenever we would have bonfires out there, and I've had people from different organizations come, and we'd sit around and we'd talk about what we think was going on with whatever they were going through at the time. And when it got dark and that porch light come on, he was easing in the house because he wasn't going to stay there.
Hmm.
Um, that house that we lived in at the time when we moved in had nobody lived there for about 4 or 5 years.
Hmm.
And the people that left that lived there before us just up and left. They thought it was haunted because stuff would beat on the floor and everything.
Mm.
Well, when we were moving in, there was an adolescent Sasquatch standing at the fence, which was about 20 feet from the front door. And the front porch was about 6 feet off the ground. And he sat there and screamed at us because we were moving in that house. Come to find out, he had crawled in there and made him a nest underneath the high side of that house, and he was sleeping under there.
Oh, wow.
He had a tree. We had a tree right next to the edge of the house that had a tree twist in it 7 feet up that was twisted counterclockwise. So I went and cut that tree down and drug it over by the fence. And he would come out there messing with their garbage and everything. My wife at the time didn't believe that Sasquatch was real, and she went to take her dog out to use the bathroom about 2:30 one night, and our garbage can was right there by the porch, and she was about 5 foot tall, and she opened the door and walked out, and it raised up and was holding the garbage can lid in his hand, and he looked her square in the eye uh, from the standing on the ground, and she screamed and dragged the dog back in the house, and he screamed and took off running through the woods. They scared each other, but she believed in him from then on.
So you had told her about Sasquatch before you
Yeah,
were,
I told her about it.
well,
Yeah,
that's quite a wake up call.
yeah. Her son was allergic to nuts, so I kept the peanut butter and chocolate and peanut butter candy and stuff that I wasn't gonna give up for him in my toolbox in my truck.
Mm.
I had two guys from the Bigfoot Outlaws come over one night. We're good friends, and uh, one of them asked, "Could we go out and he do a call?" And I was like, "Sure, you go." I mean, I was living on 40 acres. I had 10 of it rented, but a half a mile uh, down south of me, there was nothing but pastures, and there was a watershed. So every night around 6 p.m. when we got there, it sounded like the gates of hell opened up. I mean, I'd recorded it and I'd showed it to them, and they come over and they was wanting to hear it. And so they got out of the truck and were getting their recording stuff together, and it cut loose. And they're like, "What is that?" I said, "That's what I recorded for y'all. It's just like people around here don't hear that." I said, "I'm sure they do, but I don't know what they think. They don't say nothing about it." Well, after that calmed down and everything, we waited and set up their equipment there, and nothing happened. And he said, "Can I do a call?" I was like, "Sure, how about it?" He's like, "This is one that one of the other ones taught me. I want to see how it does." I said, "Well, you ain't got nothing but clear air and opportunity between here and that watershed. How about it?" And he did the holler, he did the call about 3 times and didn't nothing respond. So I said, "Well, let's go on down to the divide. I was seeing some things down there," and we left. Well, we come back and about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got in the house, and the next morning I got up, and my truck that I'd left there, you could see where something had leaned up against the passenger side bed and grabbed my toolbox and ripped the top off of my toolbox. The only thing that was missing was my peanut butter and chocolate stuff in there. But you could see on the side where it had put pressure against my truck bed to pull up at, and it broke my lock on my door on my toolbox. That's how strong it was.
Man.
And so that truck, man, they did not like that green truck. Uh, they abused that truck. Them boogers did around there. I ended up getting rid of it. The transmission went out of it, but we went down to the divide one night, and this was in December. It was like -8 degrees, and it was kind of icy. And we were down there, me and my stepson, about 2:30 in the morning, and we heard my door slam from about 3 miles away. I mean, you hear my door creak when it opened, but you heard wham, and my truck was the only one down there. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. He said, "You think that was your truck door slam?" I said, I don't know. Let's go see. And so we went back. We'd been following deer down there with a IR camera, and we got back up there, and my door was open, and it had slammed it so hard that it wasn't shut just right. So I got to looking around. I had a box of honey buns sitting under my seat there in the center console, and they was gone. That's all that was gone. And there was muddy handprints all on that door and that window, about 3 times the size of my hand, where
Mm.
it had looked in there. You could see where it looked in there. You could see where it stuck its nose on the glass and looked like it licked the window and everything else. But it got those honey buns, and it slammed the door. It had to be something with hands to open that door.
Yeah.
And those hands were nearly the size of my steering wheel.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, well, at least it tried to be courteous and shut the door for you.
Right.
Even
Yeah,
if,
and see that leads to these things are intelligent.
yeah.
Uh, they're forward thinking. My boys, when I lived in Lauderdale County, Alabama, on a property, and there was a juvenile female that would come up, and she would go through our garbage, and she would separate the plastic, the metal, and the glass and the paper, and she would separate it by color and by whatever medium it was.
Huh.
And our aluminum, cans, like our bean cans and our soup cans and stuff, was all clean, where she'd clean them out like she was tasting them, like rubbing her finger around or licking it. I don't know what she's doing. But my boys had a round sponge ball about the size of a volleyball, that they were small then, probably about 8 or 9. And they would kick it around in the yard. Well, that ball would come up missing for a week or two at a time.
Mm.
And that female was getting and playing with it. It's the only thing I could think it was. But she brought it back, and the first time she got it, she brought it back, and there was a plug bit out about half the size of a grapefruit. And she had took that plug that she bit out when she realized it wasn't food, stuck it back in the hole, and set the ball down with that plug that she bit out on the ground, like we wouldn't notice that it was a bit out if she put it on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But she would come up and watch TV, watch cartoons and stuff that the boys were watching through the window, and she'd sit there, and whenever you seen her looking at the window, and she looked at you and locked eyes with you, she screamed like a kid and ran off.
Hmm.
And it got to the point to where, like, when the boys would go to their mamas for every other weekend, they went to their mamas. She would be looking in their window, and you could see where she put her nose up against the glass and was breathing, looking in the window where the boys were. Well, uh, I got where I would open up my kitchen door when the boys were gone, put the TV on the kitchen table and plug it in so she could watch TV. And she would sit out in the tall grass and watch TV all weekend, and not bother nothing if you let her. And she
Huh.
was just like a modern human kid watching Nickelodeon or whatever I put on there, and she would sit there, just stare, and just like a kid. And you could walk up on her and probably smack her in the head if that TV is on, and she wouldn't know you was there till you touched her.
Mm.
That's how enthralled she was with that TV. Um, but she had 11 people in her family unit that lived on that property with us.
Well, she knew how to sort trash like that, so you could probably get a job at a recycling center.
Right. We all the dogs in the neighborhood were only like feist and ankle biters, and our we had those big green 90-gallon garbage cans that the garbage people pick up. They dump in the back of their truck, like in the city, and ours would be the only garbage can that would be messed up. And the neighbors, like, your dog's getting out tearing your garbage up. I was like, no, my dog's on the logging chain. If he ain't inside, he ain't tearing my garbage up. And he's like, well, I can't figure out what it is. All these little dogs can't turn that over. I said, yeah, well, I kind of think I know what it is. And we just left it at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would, there was some weeks when we would see one of the family members at least once a day. I'd have a bonfire out there, and I'd sit out there when I was going through my divorce. I'd sit out there and drink, let the fire burn, and watch them. Oh, I had half an acre cut short, and then I let the high grass grow from that. And there on the border, there was a fir tree and a weeping willow tree about 8-10 feet apart. They'd come out there and watch that fire so much that they'd build them a nest in between them two trees, and they would sit there, and you could see their eyes shine on that from that fire. Every time that fire was lit, one, two, or three, or five, however many, decided to come out there, would sit out there and watch that fire all night long. And in our area, we used to have a chip widow's wheel. That's a bird kind of like a whippoorwill in the same family. All right, we don't got them no more. But those Sasquatch, when they started coming around, they would start whistling like a chip widow's wheel, and you could hear them coming. You could hear them coming, and from different directions. And when there was a lot of them, and I had a fire out there, oh, when the whistling got too close, I'd grab my cup up like I was going to the house, give me something else to drink. I'd just close the door and leave it to them. They could sit out there and watch that fire till it burnt down.
Yeah.
I got a old recliner and put it out there by the fire one time. I got me a new one. I figured, well, I'll put that old one out there and just sit out there by the fire. And it got warm. The fire got warm, and it was kind of cool air is in the fall time. And I went to sleep. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't know if I just my subconscious mind said ain't no sounds or what, but I woke up and there was two female. There's a juvenile female, and probably her mama or aunt had already walked halfway from where that willow tree was up to my fire, looking at me. I guess because I went to sleep. I jumped up and grabbed the back of that recliner and threw it on the fire, and that sponge caught up and flamed up real big, and they screamed and ran different directions. It was just like the devil was after them. They were terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured from then on, I'm not going to get comfortable enough to go sleep. I ain't no telling what they'd done if they'd walked up on me and I'd woke up. It wouldn't have been good.
Yeah. So I guess they're kind of like bears. Like they usually don't bother you, but if you're like in their territory, you're threatening them or something, they'll do like bluff charges. And I'm sure if you were close enough and they felt threatened, I'm sure they could easily, do something
Well,
to you.
I look at it like this: a coyote and a wolf are both canines. All right. If they've both eaten, and they've both had a successful day, and they're at a water hole drinking, that coyote hasn't got to worry about that wolf. Oh, they're both canines. They don't necessarily get after the same food resources, but they're good. But if that wolf ain't eating a couple of days and he's at that water hole and that coyote's there, that wolf's going to eat. He's probably going to eat that coyote because that coyote's been close enough to him that he drops his guard. That's kind of the same way with Sasquatch and people. They both apes. Sasquatch uh, will will eat anything, literally anything. I think for years I thought they ate their dead, and they may still do. Oh, that would explain why you never see a body.
Mm-hmm.
And even some human cultures that or aboriginals ate their dead, oh, for up till I guess at least the 1800s. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities. But I've never just felt afraid around them. I've been close enough to touch one. Um, I drove up on one in a Kubota side by side one night in the field, and I went by and I thought I don't remember there being a fir tree there, and
Mm.
I pulled up, and it was every bit of 10 feet tall. Oh,
Oh,
I could stand on the hood of my Kubota, and it had 4-wheel drive tires on it. I could stand on the hood of my Kubota and look it in the eye. That's how tall that thing was, and I'm
wow.
5'8". And so I was working at a rail car plant, and it was during the construction time, and they put in a really good security cameras that had night vision and everything. And I'd actually recorded one sitting in a pear tree eating for like 30 minutes, and I was dumb enough to report what I seen, and people would laugh at me and make fun of me. Oh, you seen any gorillas? You're like, I never said nothing about a Sasquatch. I just said it looked like a gorilla, and I showed my supervisor the video I had of it. It was about 33 minutes of video.
Mm.
And so I thought they had, when I pulled up on it, I shined a spotlight in its eyes, and its eyes didn't, pupils didn't dilate or constrict or nothing. I
Hmm.
thought this is got to be fake. And I walked up on it, and I walked around it. It didn't breathe the whole time I was there. I was looking for it. Didn't smell or nothing. And I thought, I wonder what that's made out of. That hair looks real. And I went to reach, and when I went to reach to touch it, its hands did this here. It flexed its hands, and
Mm.
I mean, I was elbows distance from it,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, this ain't no joke.
Yeah.
And so I walked around it, and I got back into my Kubota and backed up and cut the spotlight off of it. It turned around and charged through underbrush on that property. It looked like a tractor had run through there. It was tearing up everything and all. And it'd been raining for 2 or 3 days before then. And after it got gone, I left. Well, I come back at next morning. And I asked my supervisor. I said, "You think I'm crazy?" He's like, "Well, sometimes I wonder why." And I said, "Well, I want to take you over here and show you something." And he was a hunter too. And I said, "I want you to tell me if this was here yesterday." And I took him over and showed him that underbrush that was tore up. I said, "Was that like that yesterday?" He's like, "No, why?" I said, "Well, come here." So we got him off, and we went over there, and I showed him the footprints where it was standing still, and the footprints where I walked around it, and you could see where it turned and jumped, and there was 15 feet from where it stood still to the next footprint. That's how far that thing launched itself. With the first step taken off, and we followed that thing for I guess 200 yards through the brush until it come out the other side, and you could see the muddy footprints on the concrete where it run down by the back of the plant.
Hmm.
And I said, "That's that gorilla that you say that I didn't see." And he's like, "Yeah, well, we got the game warden. He got the game warden out there, and that was a different story." Uh, but yeah, I was close enough. I could touch it. I started to touch it out of ignorance because I thought it was fake. So the eyes didn't dilate. It never blinked. I mean, that thing was huge. I bet it was 3 feet from the chest to the back. I
Oh,
mean, and his shoulders every bit of 5 feet wide.
I've heard a lot of times like if they're spotted, they know somebody's around, they'll just like freeze up like that,
Yeah, just like a
try
deer.
being seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting. I think they, I think they're definitely shy of people. From what I've heard, they're curious of people. Like looking in the windows, watching TV, trying to see what we're doing.
Right.
but at the same time, they don't want us to see us, or yeah, they don't want us to see them. They want to try to kind of stay hidden.
Yeah.
Um,
You ever looked into a fishbowl in a dark room?
I've
With a, you ever had a light on in a fishbowl in a dark room and you sitting there watching the fish swim? Have
I
you ever done that?
I never really have. I've never had an aquarium or fish.
Well, that's kind of like what they do to people when it's dark outside and the lights are on in the house.
Uh-huh.
They kind of look and see what they can see, kind of like people do in fish bowls when the lights on in the dark room. If that's about the best analogy that I can come up with.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm I personally don't. I would not want to harm one unless you have to for self defense, whatever. But what do you think about like carrying a sidearm or some kind of um, defense tool in the woods?
Yes,
Um,
I carry a 45 ACP with me in the woods at night. That is for hogs mostly.
mm-hmm.
Um, I'm more worried about hogs getting me than boogers getting me in the woods. However, if you see a Sasquatch in the woods, he's designated decoy while the other ones get behind you and to the side of you.
Mm,
If you pull a firearm and point it at that Sasquatch, he's going to growl at you.
mm,
If you shoot him, it doesn't matter what you got unless you got something like a big Barrett 50 caliber that's anti-tank or something. You might kill him, but it ain't going to be instant. Even headshots, I don't think would be instant with a 45. Oh, but once you pull that trigger, them others behind you is going to hit you from three different ways, and missing 411 could have been the hunters that actually fired on one. They come up messing.
yeah,
They'll never find your body, and I don't think they would be opposed to eating you either if they killed you like
yeah.
that. I mean, meat's meat for them when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wondered like so basically if they want to hurt you, you're pretty much screwed, I guess.
If they want you, the first time you will know they're around is when they grab your head, because they'll grab your head and pull it off.
Mm,
That's if they want you. People say they love them and they're friends. They don't want nothing to do with you.
mm,
Um, I've been around them and I've been tolerated. I ain't never been loved by one. I don't want to be loved by one.
yeah.
Um, uh, they uh, they look at me like I'm tolerated. I mean that even the ones that were on my property, when I got around the young ones, they would huff and throw a fit like, well, I got to move on now. He's at this property. We had 6 acres of blackberries that grew up wild from where we cut some trees off property and cleaned up that property. And my younger son wanted to see a chip widow's wheel. He always heard them hollering at night. And I was like, well, if it's a bird, I can show you. And so we went looking, and it was Sasquatch out there eating the blackberries. And we walked in the path about 15, 20 yards, and one huffed at us and stood up.
Mm,
And it was a juvenile. And when it stood up, it looked at me and it dropped his head. He looked up at me, see if I was looking at him, and I was. He dropped his head again. And when he looked up at me third time, a older female stood up about 10 feet from him. And my younger boy's like, "Daddy, this ain't birds." I was like, "No, we're gonna get back up here by our fire." And one of my YouTube videos is me sitting around a fire talking with him about it, kind of calm him down a little bit.
mm,
Uh, but uh, they was there, and that female, you could tell she wasn't happy with her. She'd huff at us. She'd roll her eyes like a woman, you know. And I was like, we gonna back up, man. I talk to them whenever I go on a property and I see one. I introduce myself just like it's a person. I
mm-hmm.
I tell them who I am. I tell them why I'm there. I say, listen, this is a pretty property. It's quiet. If you don't want me here, I'll leave. I
Mm,
said, but this is pretty quiet. There's been times when I've had a rough week and I've just went out in the backyard or whatever, or I've gone camping, and they'll show up and I'll be like, listen, if y'all don't want me here, I'll put this fire out and leave. But I've had a rough week and I'm really trying to get some peace and quiet.
mm,
And I've had 3 times when I'd actually been throwing acorns and rocks and stuff at me. And when I told them that, they quit throwing, and you hear them walk off, and they didn't bother me the rest of the night. Now, I got out of there that next day, but I stayed the night like I said I would. And they'll sit and watch you to see if you are gonna tell the truth. Um, if you say I'm leaving, uh, you better stay gone at least a day, because they'll walk you out of the woods. And a lot of people say they hear them following them, and they're watching, see what they're doing. But
mhm.
that's just no different than you. If somebody you didn't know was in your house or on your property, you'd be sitting there watching them, see what they're gonna do too. And if you say you're gonna leave, they gonna follow you out just to make sure you don't circle back around and try some sneaky stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're just really territorial. They're
Yeah. Oh,
like,
I've never, 99% of the time, I've never had an inkling of fear until I got home and either run me a bath or sitting in the shower and thinking, I can't believe I just got away with what I just did, and I got back home.
mm-hmm.
But I take chances that I don't suggest other people take. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm kind of that type too. I'm kind of a daredevil, especially being somebody that's never come face to face with one before. Uh, like I said, right now I kind of want to see one for myself, but after I do, that might change. I don't know.
the best thing you can do if you come up on one is act blissfully ignorant. Don't react to nothing. Act like you don't see them, like they ain't there, and they'll watch you. And I've watched these podcasts where these people claim to be experts, and they say, "Well, I went in the woods. That thing started throwing rocks at me and hollering and shaking trees, and it run me back to the truck." Well, you ain't no expert if you're doing that. You're harassing wildlife,
Yeah,
because you got to understand what they're doing, uh, and not let it get to that point. They've asked you nicely 4 or 5 times to leave before they start throwing stuff and screaming and all this other stuff. But that's just no different if anybody's in your house and you want them to leave and you ask them nicely to go. No, you got to expel them one way or another,
yeah,
and that's the same way with them.
mm,
So, uh, you in their house, you talk to them, be nice. If they want you to leave, leave, but don't ruin
yeah,
it.
yeah. So what do you think of people going Bigfoot hunting, like going in the woods for the purpose of finding Bigfoots? Do you think that's not a good idea, or is there any proper way to do it? Like, I don't know what you think about like calling, and I don't know if the calling will like irritate them more. Uh,
Okay, these calls they use on TV are female mating calls. How would you feel if you were a male and you heard a female hollering "I'm horny" and got there and find out it was another male there? Yeah,
yeah.
they don't call them boogers for nothing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but I don't. If you don't know what the call is, don't do it just because you see it on TV. It's tree knocking and stuff is a hunting methods. Uh, once you start knocking and they start knocking back, they might do it 2 or 3 times. When they realize that you not one of them, they quit and
Mhm.
then they ease off. And you ruined it for the rest of the night. You're not gonna get a experience after that.
So I had a buddy that was kind of a Bigfoot hunter. He had had some experiences like you, and I went out with him to Yellowwood State Forest in Indiana, and that's where I found like the tree structures and stuff. But he told me when we went out there not to do any tree knocks.
Right.
I was like, okay, but why is that? He said, from his experience, he said that seems to be more of an aggressive, like a territorial call, like when they do the tree.
Ooh,
Said he believed that was um, basically a get out of my territory kind of thing.
that could be. I
So,
mean, I just because you hear it for one troop, it means something. Doesn't mean it means it for everything.
mm-hmm.
Like on deer and stuff, you can pattern their behavior, and it works across the board. These ain't like that. And it could very well for those. I mean, it's territorial. Oh, down here, I've learned that it's a hunting strategy. Oh, and I've been out in the woods and heard them start knocking, 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 and I'm like, well, I'm getting out of here because they've surrounded me and they're knocking, and it gets closer. That can't be good.
Yeah, yeah. When I went out with him, basically he didn't do really any kind of calls or anything except just talking. He was like you said,
Right.
talking to him. He's like, "Hey, we're here. We're not here to hurt you. We want to maybe see you.
You
Something."
know,
We were talking to each other and just looking around, being real observant, and
to me, that's funny for humans to say, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. In my mind, that's the same as two rabbits walking in the woods and hollering at a mountain lion or grizzly bear saying, hey, we ain't going to hurt you. We just want to see you.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, uh, and I've learned it's better to let them come to you. Don't try to find them. You'll never find them if they don't want you to find them. But if they come into your space, they got to be on their best behavior.
mm-hmm,
It's less aggressive if they come to you, and you'll hear them walking around the campsite, and they'll start cracking limbs or something. They're being noisy, so they know they're telling you I'm here non-aggressively.
mm-hmm,
But if I'm ever out in a place and I can't find none, and it's been reported they're there, best thing to do is get you some beef and onions and green pepper and cut it up and cook it and let that smell get going.
mm.
That'll draw them up.
I'll draw me in too.
Right. Yeah, I've made fajitas a lot of times with the purpose of drawing in Sasquatch.
mm-hmm. That's a good idea,
But
but
any kind of smell like that and you don't want to get yourself associated with food with them.
mm,
But it never hurts every now and then to let them smell you cooking, because that's a natural thing for a person to do when they're camping, is cooking,
mm-hmm,
and that draws in their curiosity, and then they'll come and look. And
mm-hmm. Well, it's been really good talking to you. I got the cue from Seth that I think our time's about up. So,
yeah, I seen him looking over. I think that stink eye means we need to quit.
yeah,
Hey,
Nah, man. I appreciate you guys, man.
no problem.
yeah, thank you very much. I've had a good time tonight. It's been great talking. Good to meet
Yeah,
you.
glad to be back. It's nice to talk with good people.
Absolutely, man. I definitely plan on having both of you on again for sure.
Be
It's
glad to.
always fun listening to you two talk, man.
Yeah.
I want to thank Joe Flippo for being on. I want to thank John Crouch for being on. Everybody have a good
You're
night and
welcome.
God bless.